Hi, everybody. Welcome to this webinar this evening on debt and democracy. I'm Wiz. I'm the campaign manager at Debt Justice, and I'm really pleased to see so many of you here tonight for our online event on debt and democracy. We're really thrilled to be joined tonight by three brilliant speakers from three different continents, including our two guest speakers. Please do take a moment to say hi in the chat box and let us know where you're joining from this evening. And just while people are joining, I'm going to go through a couple of bits of housekeeping before we properly get started. So just to say that we're recording the session tonight and we'll be sharing it on our email list soon. And the format for this evening is that we'll be hearing from our speakers tonight, who I'll introduce properly in a moment. They're going to be my colleague Jerome Phelps and our two guest speakers, Farouk Tariq and Shereen Talaat, before going into a Q&A. So please do feel free to put your questions in the Q&A box or in the chat box, and we'll put as many questions to our speakers at the end as we can. We'll be wrapping up at 8:30. So let's get started and onto our next slide. Hopefully. Next slide, please. Perfect, thanks. So many of you will know that we're in the worst global debt crisis in 30 years, with 54 countries around the world currently in crisis. All over the world, unjust debt and austerity policies imposed by powerful financial institutions, the International Monetary Fund and World Bank, are undermining democracy and fueling authoritarianism. In countries that are facing economic instability as a result of unsustainable debt and severe austerity policies, people are increasingly rising up in protest at the impact this is having on their lives. Next slide, please. In recent years, we've seen protests rock countries from Sri Lanka to Kenya, Suriname, and Argentina. And sadly, in response to this growing unrest, we're seeing increasing repression of dissent in countries around the world. And it's certainly not a situation that's unique to lower income countries. We see this pattern as part of a wider shift towards crackdowns on the freedoms and human rights of people globally, including in rich countries. So tonight, we're really honoured to be joined by our two fantastic guest speakers who've been at the forefront of these calls for justice and who have witnessed how the debt crisis is giving rise to authoritarian tactics and authoritarian leaders. Next slide, please. So our guest speakers tonight are Shereen Talaat, who's the director and founder of the MENAFEM feminist movement for economic development and ecological justice. Based in Morocco and with over 20 years experience, Shereen is a leader in the global fight for climate, gender and debt justice. And Farouk Tariq, who is the General Secretary of the Pakistan Kisan Rabita Committee, a network of 31 small peasant organisations and a coalition member of the international platform La Via Campesina. Next slide. But first of all, we're going to hear from my colleague, Jerome Phelps, who's the head of advocacy at Debt Justice and who's one of the editors of our recent report, which is shown here, Debt, Austerity and Democracy, about why we wanted to do this research and how the debt crisis is acting to undermine democratic governments all around the world. So without further ado, I'll pass over to you, Jerome. Thanks.
Thanks, Wiz. I will attempt to share my screen. And so we've been we've been working with Shereen and Farouk and partners around the world on this theme of debt and democracy for the last year or so. The conversations we have with our partners on the sharp end of the debt crisis, a big part of that is how debt isn't just destroying people's livelihoods, destroying communities, decimating healthcare services, education. It's also hollowing out the democratic processes which communities look to address these problems. It's turning democracies into hollow shells, governments into simple agents of diktats of the IMF and creditors. So we pulled together, we wanted to document this. We pulled together the report that was mentioned, um, focusing on several countries and drawing out the themes of how the debt crisis, the global failure to address the debt crisis, facing lower income countries, is directly undermining democracy. Around the world. So the background to this is the failure of the G20, the self-appointed rich countries that took it on themselves to address the debt crisis in their common framework to actually address the debt crisis. In that only 4 countries have applied. Not all of them have got inadequate or no debt relief, and most of those are still waiting for at least some of their debts to be restructured. So it's a really poor situation. And what we're seeing is that this is directly leading to devastating austerity policies in these countries. We've just got some recent research out showing that countries where the IMF are telling them to continue to pay their debts have cut health and education spending by a sixth. It's a dramatic cut. Debt is
Jerome,
all,
Jerome,
yeah.
apologies, sorry. I think are you were you trying to share some slides? We're not seeing them at the moment, but I just wanted to check that are you able to
I,
screen share?
I was trying to.
If you have a link to them and you can pop it over to me quickly, I can share.
Yes.
Oh, there we go.
There
Looks
we
like
go.
it's coming up
Sorry,
now. Yeah.
that was.
Oh yeah, there we go.
Is that working now? Good.
Yeah, if you just want to make it full screen. Perfect. There you go.
Good. Um, I was only on my second slide anyway. That has always been a tool of neocolonial power. We talk about this a lot. This is not new for rich former colonial powers to use debt to control and extract resources from the countries that they formerly colonized. This has been a theme since formal independence, that countries were left with either inherited debt from their colonizers or were forced to borrow to try to address the weak and narrowly based economies they were left with. And the IMF throughout have been a tool of that coercion that requires countries to open up their economies, follow economic policies that are in the interests of the rich countries rather than their own development. But what we're seeing at the moment is this increased crisis in countries affected by the debt crisis around the world. As their requirement to implement austerity, either directly as part of the conditions of IMF loans, or because they're in order to avoid using the failing the failing G20 common framework, they are choosing to impose austerity policies in order to keep paying their debts. This is making elections meaningless. It's undermining government's abilities to respond to people's demands. So we're seeing this pattern of people rising up, protesting in the streets, voting out unpopular governments that are failing to meet their demands, and seeing these popular demands simply overridden by the demands of creditors and the IMF. So Sri Lanka is a key example here, as Wes mentioned. It's a great example of people power, throwing out the Rajapaksa dynasty, which had borrowed irresponsibly, mismanaged the economy, got to the point where Sri Lanka didn't have enough reserves for essential supplies. So the popular mobilization throughout the Rajapaksas, an unelected interim government did a very weak deal with creditors. In last year's election, there was a landslide for the left-wing opposition party, which won 63%. The new Dissanayake government was elected on a platform of standing up to the IMF, renegotiating this illegitimate deal. Yet within days, it had signed up to the deal, which imposes forces Sri Lanka to keep spending 20% of its government revenue on debt payments for decades. So the platform that they were elected on, that was the direct outcome of this popular uprising, was simply jettisoned because the new government felt it had no option but to toe the line of the demands of creditors and the IMF. So this sidelining of democracy has a really corrosive impact on democracy in countries affected, and it fuels the growth of authoritarianism. Governments that can't respond to these popular demands increasingly are either repressing protests using violence, passing laws against protest, or we're increasingly seeing authoritarians taking advantage of popular frustration to erode these democratic norms, promising magical solutions. For example, the government of Argentina. This is a very charming photo of the far right President Javier Milei of Argentina and his very close, as you can see, friend, the managing director of the IMF, Kristalina Georgieva. Milei was elected on a platform of hyper neoliberal libertarian capitalism, so to effectively be the friend of the IMF, slash budgets, dollarize the economy, and somehow solve the problem then of the debt that had been that the previous social democratic government had been struggling with in the face of relentless hostility from the IMF. This week, the Trump administration in the US is throwing another $20 billion to prop up Milei before midterm elections, but it's not working. The economy, inflation is still rising. The Argentinian people are in the streets again protesting against this far-right government that has been engineered by the IMF and the capitalist elite. So it's, I think that it's an example of this cycle of growing repression of protests, growing repression of the demands for living standards, for investment in essential services, and for the basic promise of development that the global regime has been promising lower income countries for decades and is increasingly reneging on. And I think debt is really at the center of this really disturbing trend of undermining these democratic governments. But I know that Shereen and Farouk can speak about this with much more direct experience. I'm going to stop there. I can stop screen sharing.
It's probably a little button up at the top.
There you go.
Thanks, Jerome. Thanks so much. That was a brilliant background introduction to the topic, and I'm now going to introduce Shereen, who's based in Morocco and is the director and founder of the MENAFEM feminist movement for economic development and ecological justice, and is going to talk to us about the situation in Egypt and Morocco. Over to you, Shereen.
Thanks a lot, and thanks also for the intervention that Jerome already made. I want to say that خلاص, it's very obvious how our reality in the global south and the Swana region as part of the global south became under the debt vicious circle that we are living under. And طبعا يعني that comes with austerity. And actually that has become a new form of colonialization, a new form of control, governments and controlling our lives. Governments may look democratic in terms that they have process of voting, elections, etc. But unfortunately, their policies are written elsewhere. Their policies are written in behind closed doors, in discussions with the IMF and World Banks, and that has now redefined sovereignty in our region. It decides who eats, who works, and who rules. So in Egypt and Morocco and all of the countries that actually has programs from the Bretton Woods institutions. So it's not only fueling authoritarian regimes, but it is crushing social rights, and it is determine how you live on daily basis. But let's not forget the huge moment that actually defined my life, which was 2011, the Arab Spring, when people came out on the street screaming for bread and freedom and social rights. And believe it or not, this scream actually made an institution like the World Bank or the IMF to look back to their policies and to change their policies and to start to speak about equality and to start to speak about new programs for social protection, debt and gender, gender and climate, etc., which is now they are taking it back. So what are you expecting from people under a very bad situation? They will fight back. People will fight back. In Egypt, for example, that and it's all obvious now how the debt crisis is elevating more and more in Egypt. Egypt today is living a debt crisis, not a development story. That needs to be clear. External debt rose from $43 billion in 2013 to more than 165 billion in 2025. Over 60% of Egypt revenue now go to interest and debt service. And also Egypt from the countries that is paying surcharges for the IMF. So that means every public bond is paying creditors, not citizens. So, and every IMF program come with the same conditions: cut in subsidies, devalue the currency, freeze wages, privatization of assets, and inflation reached 35% last year. in a recent report, in a recent paper that was produced by MENAFEM, austerity actually kills people in Egypt nowadays. 12 farmers, workers, part of them are students and working to earn their breads, and others are breadwinners, have lost their life because of austerity measures, because of cutting and subsidizing the cutting of the subsidies of the energy sector, for example. And actually putting a priority of doing infrastructures for the elite and forgetting about the rest of the people. So, and actually in another in a MENAFEM study on austerity and gender poverty showed how this hits women hardest. Public child care and health care disappeared. Women picked up the unpaid care. Girls left school to help families to survive. That became political. It's strengthened the state that holds over the economy. And within, of course, if there are more, if there is more than shrinking of civic space, I will say it. So, and yes, there is election, but economic power now sits in loan agreements, not in parliaments. I live in Morocco. The past month was a very important month. Gen Z, Gen Z uprising, Gen Z 212 uprising. It was big. It was obviously, it was a scream from the people on how debt is killing them. I remember in 2024, last year, after the decision of the surcharges, and it's a campaign that MENAFEM and partners were holding for 2 years on eliminating surcharges, and when the response came after a huge campaigning advocacy and to reduce the surcharge of 37%. And we weren't actually that happy of this victory, because I saw how Morocco was running to pay their debt interest, although it was facing 2 years in a row ecological disasters, the debt, the earthquake in 2023, and then floods on 2024, and yet running to repay their debt interest, not to go to be part of the groups who are paying surcharges like Egypt and Tunisia and Jordan, which is unfair. And that is who pays the price? People pays the price. So Morocco looks more stable, but the same logic rules. Public debt is around 70% of GDP. The IMF calls it sustainable, but people call it suffocating. Subsidies were reduced, public sector froze, youth unemployment passes 30%. So people went to the street. Gen Z protests filled the streets of not only the major city, but everywhere. And actually also MENAFEM paper, the Beyond Extractivism that we produced with Greenpeace shows the pattern. Loans for so-called green transitions, hydrogen, solar infrastructure still serve private investor, not people. Debt is growing, inequality is widening. طبعا rural women face the huge burden, crop loss, unpaid care burdens. So the protests are not about one generation. It was about the system where debt ranks above democracy. So last year we came together as activists, academia, researchers, feminists from the MENA region, from Africa, from the Global South, and from the global movement, gathered in Rabat to write our roadmap, to write what this global economical structure means to us. And my colleagues here will share also the Rabat Declaration and the Rabat Roadmap. We wrote the Rabat Declaration for feminist, economic, ecological, and social justice. We call debt and how it is a tool of domination used to discipline our cultures of the South. The declaration demands cancel illegitimate debt now, democratize economic decision-making, center care economies and local knowledge, end austerity as a permanent policy, and establish a UN debt convention. So the Rabat roadmap turned these words into action. So to debt audits, cross-regional alliances, joint campaigns linking feminist, climate, and labor movement. Also, the declaration came from lived pain, not theory. It came from women farmers losing lands, teachers unpaid for months, youth demanding jobs, and communities defending their rights to decide. And on the center of this crisis, the resistance is growing. In Egypt, grassroots economists and unions are exposing the IMF conditionalities. In Morocco, young people are connecting economic justice with climate and political reform. And across the MENA region, feminist groups like MENAFEM and others are building alternatives based in redistribution, care, and accountability. This is not protests for the sake of protest. It demands for a new social contract to build sovereignty and dignity. And I believe it's not only a need that we need to fulfill, it is a must. And if it's not happening now, then when? Even the IMF and the World Bank managing directors Jai Banga and Kristalina Georgieva were speaking this year and last year annual meetings about how its debt is growing and it is undermining development, and yeah, happy that you know. And then what? Now, although what happened in 2011 changed a lot of policies, but I have to say it's not enough. And I also have to say that the genocide in Palestine was super revealing of the global economical architecture and how it is dealing with us, how it's seeing us. And for us now, this global economical architecture is a dead horse. It's not working for us. It's not working for people. It's not working for people in Morocco and Egypt. Yet still it's ruling our lives. Yet still we are governed by a quota system that we don't have a vote in. Yes, yet still we are governed by a system that is killing us every day. It's not about fighting for winning bread. We are dying. And I don't think that we are going to accept this anymore. Thank you.
Shereen, thank you so much. I can feel the passion emanating from you as you're speaking, and just such, yeah, so amazing to hear your story and your testimony, and for you to share your experience in that way. It's just incredibly powerful. Thank you. And for anyone who hasn't spotted the links that have been shared in the chat box, yeah, please do take a moment to check out those links to work that's being done by the amazing MENAFEM movement and the Rabat Declaration. I'm now going to pass over to Farouk Tariq, who's the General Secretary of the Pakistan Kisan Rabita Committee, and who's going to tell us about the situation in Pakistan. So now we'll be passing over to you, Farouk. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It is the same story, Shereen, in Pakistan also. Not only in Pakistan, but in most of South Asian countries. The same sort of repressive measures are used to suppress dissent. And there is a growing foreign debt in each country of South Asia. Pakistan is a direct example of growing debt with declining democracy. So we see more the debt is, less the democracy is. And new repressive laws have been introduced during the last 5 years, particularly, just to repress all sort of dissent and ordinary people who are demanding better wages or implementation of minimum wage and so on. So we see a direct link, and IMF is mainly responsible. Whenever there is an IMF loan agreement with Pakistan, the first thing that is been asked by Pakistan is that they should start austerity. They should try to raise their own resources. And new resources are not generated by implementing super tax on the rich, but indirect tax on the poor. So one of our main slogan has been tax the rich, not the poor. But it's almost 18% general sales tax in Pakistan at present time. So everyone in Pakistan is aware that they are paying tax. It was not the case earlier, but now general sales tax has made every citizen clear that they have been paid this undue tax, which is equal to rich and the most poor. And whenever IMF is granting a loan, normally the prices of electricity, gas, oil, and other such services are raised. Pakistan has the highest electricity rate at this time in South Asia because of the demand of the IMF that is the only way you can raise your funds to repay the debt. And there's another side of the story. Pakistan has been victim of climate disaster during the last few years again and again. In 2022, 33 million people were impacted by the disastrous floods and torrential rains. Uh, and even at that time, Pakistan paid 25% more foreign debt than the previous year. Instead of demanding or suspending the debt and using that amount on the rehabilitation of the people, they were eager to pay. And at that time, it was Imran Khan who was prime minister, and he was very proudly saying all the time that we are paying more foreign loans than any other government. Now, Imran Khan at this time is in jail for last 3 years because he did not go along with the wishes of the military. So there is a growing militarization of the society while there is growing debt in the society. Now, Pakistan at this time owes almost $131 billion in foreign debt. And this year, this was the largest expenditure of the national budget. Almost 47% of the total budget was paid for the repayment of the foreign loan. And we see the growing influence of military in all sphere of life during the last few years. Imran Khan was brought by the military to power, and they also throw him out of the power. So military control politics, military control judiciary, and now recently they have introduced a new law which is called the Prevention of Electronic Crimes Act, PICA. That means that if you spread any false news, so-called false news on the media, you can be in jail for 3 years and you can be fined over 2 million Pakistani rupees. And look at which other country has such laws. It's Russia, it's China, and it's Turkey. So all the repressive regimes I don't say that others are not repressive, but these three are particularly using this electronic crime act to control the opposition. Now, PICA has been used against almost every opposition voices. Most of the organizations of the working class, including the journalists, have vigorously opposed this PICA Act. Not only in that, military has been given power to take any person away for 7 days. So they can't bring that person into a court. So that sort of powers have been given to military, and also there is a growing sort of the military is putting a lot of political power in Pakistan. That's why Pakistan military general, which has been enhanced as field marshal, is the favorite field marshal of President Trump, who has called him to White House, and he has mentioned him several times that he's my favorite field marshal. And this field marshal has done a lot of repressive measures inside Pakistan, and people are in jail because of their opposition voices. We are totally opposed to such repressive measures, and we are totally opposed to militarization of the civilian society. Now, what we have seen now, that in 2022, when there was a flood, Pakistan was supposed to pay $127 billion. And in 2023, because they paid more money in foreign debt, so the so it declined by 2.4% because they paid more. And now in 2025, Pakistan has to pay over 135 US billion dollar, and that meant that every year Pakistan has to pay $30 billion in foreign mature loans and also in interest rates. For instance, this year they paid $26.48 billion in mature foreign loan, and interest is $3.86 billion. So what we have been saying, that we don't need any new foreign aid to combat the recent floods in Pakistan. It's only that the rich country must suspend the repayment of the foreign loan, and that is sufficient amount to rehabilitate and reinstate the life in Pakistan. Now, last month, Pakistan saw the worst floods in Punjab. The three rivers, Satluj, Ravi, and Chenab, they had their worst floods in whole of the history of Pakistan. And we have seen, I have visited several areas, we have seen total disaster taking over of the land by water, destroying, and also floods made more losses because a lot of housing societies were built on the paths of the river and initiated by both civilian and military administrations. So they are very eager to please the IMF and World Bank, but they are very eager to displease the people of Pakistan by increasing the prices of ordinary services which the state must provide. Shereen was talking about how Egypt has gone through these privatization and other aspects of neoliberalism. So is the case in Pakistan. Now, in Punjab, particularly, almost every services which the state was providing is under threat of privatization. Education, health, transport, everything. Most of the primary schools have been privatized, and most of the hospitals have been privatized also. So are the larger institutions which are now been privatized just to raise funds to repay the foreign loan. So all the ingredients of new liberalism can be seen, and we can see that what we see is like a hybrid regime where military controls the civilian matters, and then they decide what to do and what not to do. And that's where they are normally um, taking all the benefits for the military institutions. So foreign debt is the largest expenditures of the national budget. Second largest is so-called defense, and that's where most of the money goes in these two areas. And now another aspect is that some of the military organizations like Fauji Foundation, Army Welfare Trust, they don't pay tax exemptions only for the military institutions, but not for ordinary people. And a super tax was imposed earlier in 22, but now it's been under threat by the Supreme Court as well. The judges are saying, why new tax on the rich? It should be equal to all the people and so on. So there is a total sort of class, elite domination rule, which is really repeating the colonial era of the past. Pakistan is a classical example how a democracy can be under threat while there are growing debt. So there's a direct link between the two. More the debt is been paid, more the less democracy is been introduced, and more repressive laws are introduced. Now I can also say that this is a new liberal of militarism that allow to control resources, repress the dissent, and operate largely outside the civilian force. So um, we are witnessing also a new wave of controlling the judiciary. A 26th amendment in the constitution was introduced, and that means any judges which had some liberal progressive vices or vices for the people, or who are not going along with the wishes of the hybrid regime. Now they are total controlled by the civilian government, which is totally controlled by the military. So here our struggle is going on. A lot of protests have been witnessed in Pakistan, particularly by the public sector employees. Utility stores have been abolished, which was established in the 70s, which was providing some basic grocery items to ordinary people on a little cheaper basis than the ordinary superstores. And that has been abolished. 11,000 jobs gone just in that institutions. So more unemployment seen, more price hike seen, more, as Shereen was saying, more deaths have been seen. Lot of suicides I saw several times in news, where a father first killed wife, 3 or 4 children, and then himself, because he could not afford to pay them a reasonable amount for a decent life. And that is the case very often now taking place in Pakistan. And just the last point I would say, Pakistan was at war with India, and that war had created an opportunity for people to move forward for peace between the South Asian country. But more right-wing government in power, more democracy is declining. So we see Modi government in India and Sharif government in Pakistan. Both are right-wing conservative governments. Both are using religion. Both are trying to use religion to protect their elite interests, and they tell people it's in your fate that you are not rich, that you are poor. And so one of our another struggle in Pakistan is struggle for peace. So peace, democracy goes together alongside a struggle against repayment of the foreign loans. Thank you.
Farouk, thank you so much. That was incredibly moving. And yeah, just incredibly articulate explanation of the situation in Pakistan. And yeah, thank you to both of our incredible speakers for sharing your experience and testimonies and your incredible knowledge of the situation in your countries. We're going to have some time to put questions to our speaker, to all three of our speakers. So please do pop any questions that you have in either the Q&A box, which you should be able to find in the middle of your screen, or in the chat box to the right-hand side. And while you're doing that, we'll be sharing in the chat box our Council Debt Choose Hope petition, which is calling on world leaders to take urgent action on the debt crisis. We're going to be handing a version of this petition to the Prime Minister very soon, and the signatures will also all be added to a global petition that's being signed by campaigners and activists all around the world to help really ramp up joint demands for action on the debt crisis. So please do take 2 minutes to sign that if you haven't already. And secondly, I'm really excited to share that in a few weeks' time, we're going to be holding our Debt Justice Activist Gathering on Saturday, the 8th of November in London, in Bethnal Green. We've got a really exciting lineup of speakers, including author, commentator and journalist Grace Blakely and Amnesty International's activism director, Sotes Chowdhury. It's a free event to attend, so if you're free on the 8th of November, then do come and join us. You can register by clicking on the link that my colleague Sky is sharing in the chat box. So a couple of questions then to kick us off for the Q&A. And maybe if our speakers, so Farouk, Shereen and Jerome, you could pop your cameras back on. So we had a question from Owen around what can be done to get greater coverage of the world debt crisis in the Western mainstream media, which I think is a really good question to kick us off with. And also, I wanted to ask, the situation in these in the countries in debt crisis is so dire, and what are the things that kind of give you hope or that keep you going in this current climate? So they were the two I thought we might start with. Is anyone keen to kick us off on either of those questions? And maybe Shereen and Farouk, maybe if either of you are keen to speak to that question about what gives you hope, I think it would be very interested to hear what kind of keeps you going in this current climate.
Yes. What gives me hope? What always gives me hope? People. There was a moment at the beginning of the genocide when I stopped and asked myself what I'm doing here. What I'm doing here, what I'm doing in this space. At the end of the day, I am a mother. And I was putting my child to bed every night and being able to sing her a song and take care of her. And another mother like me is losing her children. So I really stopped and it's not about I lost hope, but it was a moment of just silent. My world was not speaking anymore to me. But because of my daughter and because of people resistance and because of all the waves of liberation that actually went through over the world, that actually gave me hope. And I'm not giving up this struggle till I find a breath of justice for my daughter and for our futures and for our people. And I'm happy that we, Farouk, and others, and the justice colleagues are part of this fight together, because yes, power to the people. People are the power, and let's keep this in mind. Thank you.
Okay, I can say also a few sentences on this. Shereen, I share your feelings. Same is the case in Pakistan. Uh, we have nothing but hope, and we have nothing else but to resist and to build people's movement on all the issues against dictatorship. I have spent 8 years in exile. I have been arrested dozens of times, uh, and never ever I lost hope that one day things will change and people will come out. And we have seen that the upsurge of the youth in Bangladesh and also in Nepal very recently, things come up like this. But because there's no alternative, there's no sort of party which can bring those feelings more in a concrete manner. So movements then recede, and things become little more difficult afterwards. But I can say you one example. We have a city called Faisalabad. It's a textile city. It is the largest textile city in Pakistan. Uh, Workers who were in the power loom sector, they went on strike for only 8% wage increase. Bosses did not agree. The movement went on for 58 days, which is the largest ever strike. And finally, they have to, the bosses has to withdraw, and some gains were made for the working class. So for 58 days, we know we have to provide rations, we have to provide food. Workers did not lose hope in the union, which the bosses were demanding. You leave your union, we will give you everything. And workers said, no, we will not leave our union. Our leaders will remain our leaders. And these are the working class leaders who are not like the elite class leaders who are also facing the same. And so, very recently, the minimum support price of the crops were slashed 2 years before in Pakistan. Our peasant organization, Pakistan Peasants Coordination Committee in English, which launched a campaign all over Pakistan that at least the minimum support price for the farmers should be in the public sector and should be announced. And only last week we heard that government has agreed to our demand because farmers refused to grow wheat crop before the rates have been announced. Although we're not satisfied, but some gain only this week we have made. So we have a little victories as well, and we celebrate our little victories, and we bring all the little victories together, hopefully for a better and bigger victory, and abolishing the system, abolishing capitalism really, which is the main base for all the exploitation, and fight for a socialist society. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Farouk. Thank you both. That's really, very motivating. And Jerome, would you be happy to share what gives you hope as well? And maybe if you're happy as well to speak to about what can be done to get greater coverage of the debt crisis in the Western media. Be interesting to hear your thoughts on that.
Yes, thanks. Good questions. Yeah, I mean, question hope's I'm sure a difficult one for all of us every morning. It's not easy every day, but I think there's in some ways sort of focusing on debt, focusing on this one campaign and working with all these incredible inspiring people and movements like Shereen and Farouk's does give you that energy, that in that sense that we can change things. I mean, I think just like the example of this year, the huge global mobilization of campaigning around the Jubilee campaign, targeting this UN conference for financing for development, where there were protests around the world, including here in London. There was this real sense of popular mobilization that led to African particularly and lower income country governments negotiating really hard to push for democratization of the debt space, for a UN process to take charge of the failing G20 cartel dominance of debt restructuring processes. And they didn't succeed. The US Europe pushed back, and we didn't win, but we didn't lose either. The African governments pushed really hard. They got language into the agreement, including on the need for legislation in the countries like the UK, which is our central campaign. So it's a small step, but it shows that small steps are possible. And if we can keep building on this progress, then even in the face of these sometimes overwhelming seeming odds against us, we can win. Yeah, Western mainstream media, however, that's the hard one. Yeah, I think, I mean, we do. We've actually got 4 or 5 stories this week in the UK press at Debt Justice, so we're feeling pleased with ourselves. From admittedly a relatively low starting point, the debt crisis is not front page news in the way that it should be. Successful. We're up against a media agenda where politicians say something offensive and racist is news, and Pakistani farmers successfully mobilized to defend their rights is not news. It's not something we can change overnight, but we can, again, small steps, we can gather the evidence, get better at telling those stories, at forming voices from the grassroots resistance in affected countries in ways that can get media attention. And the more it gets into the story, the more journalists recognize that debt is part of other stories they're covering about things that are considered newsworthy, like protests, riots, governments falling. Incrementally, I think we can get debt more centrally into all of those narratives, including the ones around democracy and fascism that we're talking about today.
Thanks so much, Jerome. I think and if I could just keep you there's another question that's just come in, probably off the back of what you were saying about the UN conference, about where we've got to in the UK on getting the government to pass legislation to compel private lenders to cancel debt. So maybe if I could come back to you for that, and then also I was going to ask all of you, and maybe particularly Farouk and Shereen, what we can do, what you think it's helpful for people in the UK and other wealthy nations to do to support people like yourselves calling for debt cancellation in the global south. But maybe if Jerome, can I come to you first on that question about the legislation? Thanks.
Yes, again, there's hope. We're not winning it today, but we're in the game. Basically, we've been on a very sort of contorted dialogue with Labour, the government. In opposition, David Lammy, the then Shadow Foreign Secretary, was very enthusiastic. The closer they got to power, the more cautious they got. In power, many of you will know Rachel Reeves and the Treasury are largely running the government and have a veto on policy. So at the moment, there was a certain level of interest, but at the moment, Treasury says no is the top line. But ministers are still saying that they're not ruling it out. They're still talking to us, which is a good sign. Even they seem to know, they seem to realize they can't rebut our arguments, so they just they the last we had off the record, we had a more positive conversation with the development minister at Labour conference, who sort of said again, Treasury says no, and I'm busy with slashing the age budget, but at some point maybe we'll look at it. So they're not ruling it out. They know we have strong arguments, but it's politics. It's the same question really. We need to build power. We need to build momentum. We need media. We need that sense of pressure so that the government feels they have to do something because they're under pressure to do something. They've cut aid. They've disgraced themselves before the global south. That is one thing that they can do without it costing them money. They can pass this law. We need to hold them account and make them do it.
Thanks, Jerome. And Farouk, it looked like you were getting ready to answer that next question about so Jerome's just been talking about the campaign that we've been running for a few years now for what we've been calling a debt justice law here in the UK, so private creditor legislation. But are there things that you would like to see campaigners and activists doing in the UK or other countries to support the demands of campaigners and activists like yourself in the global south? Thanks.
Before that, I would just like to say something on the media coverage, which the question was asked. We are the activists who have been in the inside pages of daily newspaper for long time. But we always kept sending news to journalists. We never ever lost the hope that one day we will be on the front page or the back page of the newspapers. But last 2 years, because of our consistent effort and also the growing power of our organizations, the more people into our organizations had brought many of the journalists to this thing. Yes, we should also be given some coverage. So this is now the time when we organize a press conference, we organize an event. We are taken little serious than in the past by the mainstream journalists. Then we use our own social media activism. We have teams of young people who really do wonderful work to bring forward our messages, and some of our youth leaders have huge following. Hundreds and thousands of activists are following them on Twitter and Facebook and so on. So we have started building our own alternative to the mainstream media if we are not heard over there. And also the crisis is such that journalists are feeling the pain, and they also like to associate themselves. For instance, our slogan, tax the rich, not the poor, was very popular among journalists, and it has been taken over by all the national dailies whenever we spoke about it or organized an event around this. And it is very important aspect of our work, that is international solidarity. I don't think that we can ever survive in a country like Pakistan without the international solidarity, which we always try to link up our struggle, and we always receive some sort of support, a letter, a social media update, or a letter to Prime Minister against the arrests and so on are very important. And I can tell you one more thing. In Pakistan, the Palestine question was posed as a religious question. Muslims are under attack. We always resisted that notion. And when there was massive demonstrations, particularly in London, despite all the arrests, and also in all other European countries, we told these fanatics who were saying that it's Muslim against the Jewish or Jewish against the Muslims, who said those who are in the streets of London are not Muslims. Part of that are Muslims, but majority are not Muslims. So why they are coming in the streets of Palestine? because it's a human right issue. It's an issue of our survival. It's not a religious issue. And religion is not that you should put in every aspect of life. Religion must be separated from politics. Religion must not be based of our any argumentation. That's what we have learned in Pakistan. So we have always um, relied on the international solidarity. I can tell you the last example. When I was arrested again and again in 2007 and 2008, hundreds and thousands of letters went to Pakistan for me and my colleagues' release. And that really helped when a climate prisoner, Baba Jan, was in jail for 9 years in Gilgit-Baltistan because he helped for the rehabilitation of a artificial lake. Gilgit-Baltistan is next to China. It was always the international solidarity that brought some relief for him, even in the jail. So it is very important to link up. We never think our struggle is national. Our struggle is always an international struggle. And campaign against debt cancellation has to be linked with the campaign in the advanced countries on the same situation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Farouk. Excellently put. And Shereen, if we could come to you with the same question, I think you may be needing to leave shortly. So, but yeah, it'd be great to hear from you, your perspective as well on what we can do in countries like the UK.
Of course, first of all, a small clarification: the genocide in Gaza, the Palestine freedom issue is not any kind of religious issue. Who were killed in Gaza was Christians, Muslims, non-believers, and others who were defending and doing resistance. Weren't only the Islamic resistance movement. There were people who are fighting for their lives. So going back to your question, let's not forget something. The debt crisis that we are living under has a colonial roots. Yani we didn't just like come out of nothing as poor people. No, we've been made we've been put under this situation because of the histories of colonialism, histories of and years of extractivism, and as Kaumeno Kroma mentioned, the new shape of colonialism under the new liberal and the capitalistic system, which took the shape of institutions, international financial institutions. So it is it's not using again army or tanks, although they are using now tanks and arms ID in our lives. But it is our wealth that actually built and contributed in building the northern wealth. So we are not asking for debt cancellation because we're asking for free money. We're asking for our lives and money and resources back. We're asking for reparation. We're asking for cancel the debt for paying for your colonial history. So it's a very important. The role of our northern colleagues are very important, not only to hold the countries accountable in terms of debt, like the great role that like debt justice and others are doing, but also, and that is what the Rabat roadmap was about, but also to understand what solidarity here means. It means adopting our demands, adopting our voice, and be able to raise it on your country and government level. You have access, I don't have access. This is the action of solidarity. Thank you.
Thank you, Shereen. Incredibly powerful as ever. And I don't know whether, do you need to leave? Are you leaving us now?
I'm sorry, I'm attending an event in Mexico in person, so I
Okay.
have to leave. I'm so
No,
sorry.
I just wanted to say thank you again so much for joining us tonight. It's just been so, yeah, very moving and really inspirational hearing from you. And yeah, thank you for bringing that colonialist perspective in as well, or anti-colonial perspective, I should say. Thank you. Yeah, we'll be in touch very soon. And then one more question that's come in for Farouk from Eric. Is it true, Farouk, that the upper classes in Pakistan pay very little income tax apart from exemptions for the military? Yeah, if you'd be happy to speak to that, that would be great.
Yes, it's not that they pay little taxes to the government. They receive a lot of subsidies by the government. There was a research that over 17 billion US dollar is been paid to the elite class every year in concessions rather than they pay any tax. And another example is international it's independent, so-called independent power plants. There are a lot of independent power plants which are generating electricity by gas and by coal and by oil, and they have made a very unjust agreement with the government that they must be paid the capacity payment. They produce electricity or don't produce electricity, they must be paid. And some of us went to demonstrate in front of a Chinese provided coal power plant in Sahiwal only last month. And when we researched about that plant, 9 billion rupees were paid to that plant for not producing any electricity. So all these big institutions, China, Americans, they are getting all sort of support, and Pakistani ruling elite, because they control the parliament, and it's a feudal class which is hand in hand with the capitalist class, which has become an unholy alliance against the working class, and the parliament is totally dominated by the rich. And for instance, there has been a great demonstration in Indonesia against the perks of the parliamentarian, also in Nepal. So is the case in Pakistan, that I think over 100% raised by these parliamentarians, not only parliamentarians, the president, the prime minister, the judges, all have raised their own wages. Uh, Although people have not come out in the street, but there is a great anger among the people, which will become a movement at one time, because people cannot afford that they are they at this time there's 45% poverty rate in Pakistan. 45% of Pakistan population earns less than $3 a day. And so you can imagine the way I have seen extreme poverty among many families which were affected by the floods. Their whole belongings were just one suitcase, few clothes, one or two chairs, one bed, and that's all. That's all they have in their whole life. And their government is not providing them any support. All the promises that Pakistan will be paid loss and damage fund, or Pakistan will be have some reparation, is just fake. No money has been paid, and it's all again and again. Pakistan is a victim of climate disaster, but there is no sort of uh, any support by the countries of the rich. So our demands is on two sides. One, we are demanding on our own government, and also our own elite class, that they should pay the tax. They should not have a special privileges. But also we are taking up the issue with the countries of the rich, that they must pay for the crime they have done in the past. They must pay to in loss and damage, and also in reparation for the exploitation of centuries which countries of the south has been experiencing by these colonialists. Thank you.
Thank you, Farouk. We're just gonna, before we wrap up, we've got one last question for our panelists. Maybe Jerome, if you could kick us off on just any kind of last comments, and what one thing could people on this call tonight do to support the campaign for debt justice? Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, it's great that so many people have come. Thanks all for giving up your evening. Yeah, so we're asking everyone to put their name to a petition to call on world leaders to stop the debt crisis and cancel unjust debt, including by passing this this law in the UK that would require private creditors to cancel debts alongside other creditors. Like we were saying, we need that political pressure. We need to show the government that people out there care about this. It's not just lobbyists. This is a real political issue that needs to be acted on. I'll put the link in the chats. Yeah, but, and yeah, thanks for coming.
Thanks, Jerome. And Farouk, same question to you. So any kind of final comments, and what one thing, if there's one thing you'd like people on this call tonight to do off the back of the call, what would it be?
Yes, I think that debt justice campaign is a very important campaign for all of us. It has to be linked with the other campaigns. It has, because we can't just go for one campaign. It has to be cross-cutting themes which we should link. We are demanding just transition. We are demanding debt justice, climate justice, and also better implementation of labor laws and so on. So all our campaigns are interlinked, and we have to do a campaign from different angles. And this campaign must be part of our international solidarity, because uh, without international solidarity, we we feel unsafe. While I can tell you my own personal experience, while I was in jail, I was really pleased that a lot of international solidarity messages are coming to Pakistan. So I was feeling that I'm not alone, I'm not forgotten, and we are people who knows what I'm doing in Pakistan. They are doing the same in the advanced countries. So we are doing almost the same campaigns on a different level, but it has to be linked together. As this webinar has brought us from Morocco and Pakistan to our audience. I tried that some Pakistanis could come, but it's a bit late in Pakistan. It's around 12 at this time, so difficult for many of our friends who could join here. But we should really organize maybe an event where we should bring together really activists from the countries of the south and countries of the advanced countries. So that could be a really interesting sort of exchange, and things can become more coordinated in that manner. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Farouk. I think you've just given us an idea for the next online event that we do. And and just to say, luckily Farouk is able to join us this evening from the UK, so thankfully he's not up at midnight. And thank you so much, Jerome and Farouk, again, like so inspiring to hear from you. Yeah, to hear about all the work that's happening, all the campaigning and activism that's going on. And also to hear directly from Farouk and Shereen and those challenging authoritarianism and repression around the world. And we're just going to share the links one last time in the chat to the Council Debt Choose Hope petition. So yeah, another chance to sign that if you haven't already. And for the activist gathering that I mentioned earlier that we'll be holding on Saturday, the 8th of November in London. If you're on our mailing list, you'll also receive a recording of the event tonight by email in the coming weeks. And just wanted to say as well, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. It's been really incredible to just hear such compelling stories and testimonies. And I also, just feel really galvanized by being in this space with you all and seeing so many of you at this event this evening. So yeah, thank you to all of you who joined, for everything you do to support these demands for debt justice. And we hope to see you on another event very soon. Many thanks.
You.
Thank you.
People.
Thanks, everybody.